In a quiet suburban neighborhood where most houses looked almost identical, there lived a man named Alex Thompson. Alex was in his early 30s, with a friendly demeanor that often masked his underlying anxiety in social situations. He had recently moved to the area after accepting a job at a local tech company, hoping to make a fresh start after his divorce. Alex wasn't the type to impose himself on others, but he was determined to be more outgoing in this new chapter of his life. His intention when knocking on doors in his neighborhood was simple: to introduce himself to his neighbors and perhaps find some sense of community in this unfamiliar place. The neighborhood itself was the kind where people took pride in their properties: manicured lawns, seasonal decorations, and the occasional personalized welcome mat that offered a glimpse into the personalities behind each door. These doors, seemingly mundane objects, would soon become significant markers in Alex's journey of self-discovery and connection. It was a Saturday afternoon in early autumn when Alex decided to begin his neighborly introductions. The air was crisp, and golden leaves scattered across the sidewalks as he approached the first house. This particular door was painted a deep burgundy, standing out among the neutral-toned homes that lined the street. It belonged to house number 42, though Alex was actually looking for number 24. The mix-up was an honest mistake. The neighborhood's numbering system was confusing, with odd numbers on one side and even numbers seemingly arranged at random on the other. As Alex pressed the doorbell, he clutched a small housewarming gift he had brought along, a potted plant with a handwritten note attached. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her mid-40s with curly auburn hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked slightly startled but offered a polite smile. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice warm but cautious. Alex immediately launched into his rehearsed introduction. "Hi, I'm Alex Thompson, your new neighbor at number 24. I just wanted to introduce myself," and he trailed off as confusion crossed the woman's face. "I'm sorry," she replied, "but this is number 42. Number 24 is across the street and 2 houses down." Alex felt his face flush with embarrassment. Here he was, trying to make a good impression, and he couldn't even get the house number right. He apologized profusely, explaining his confusion with the neighborhood layout. The woman, who introduced herself as Margaret, was understanding and even chuckled at his mistake. "It happens to delivery drivers all the time," she assured him. As Alex retreated down her front steps, he couldn't help but notice how Margaret's eyes had lingered on him with interest. There was something about her, perhaps her kind smile or the way she didn't make him feel foolish for his error, that left an impression. Walking away, Alex felt a curious mixture of embarrassment and intrigue. He hadn't planned on meeting Margaret, but their brief interaction had been unexpectedly pleasant. Still determined to find his actual neighbor at number 24, Alex crossed the street, carefully checking house numbers as he went. Let me explain why this first encounter matters to our story. It's often the unplanned moments in life that lead to the most significant connections. Alex's mistake, seemingly inconsequential, had already set in motion a series of events that would challenge his perception of coincidence and intention. His accidental knock had opened not just a physical door, but a metaphorical one as well, leading to a path he hadn't anticipated when he set out that afternoon. The second door Alex approached was markedly different from Margaret's. While her home had exuded warmth with potted plants flanking the entrance and a seasonal wreath adorning the door, this house had a more minimalist aesthetic. The door was a sleek, modern design in charcoal gray with a simple silver knocker. This time, Alex double-checked the number, 24, before knocking. His confidence had taken a hit after the mix-up with Margaret, and he wanted to get it right this time. He waited, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, the potted plant still in hand. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened to reveal a man roughly Alex's age, dressed in workout clothes and wireless earbuds hanging around his neck. "Yeah?" the man asked, his tone suggesting Alex had interrupted something important. Once again, Alex launched into his introduction, explaining that he had recently moved in nearby and wanted to meet his neighbors. The man, who reluctantly introduced himself as Jason, seemed unimpressed by the gesture. "Look, man, that's nice and all, but I'm in the middle of a workout. Maybe another time." Before Alex could respond, Jason had already begun closing the door. "Wait," Alex said quickly. "I think I might have the wrong house again. I'm looking for the Millers." Jason's expression shifted from impatience to confusion. No Millers here. They might be at 42 across the street. And with that, the door closed firmly in Alex's face. Standing on Jason's doorstep, Alex felt a wave of confusion. Had he misheard the address he was looking for? Or was this another genuine mistake? Either way, he now had a legitimate reason to return to Margaret's door, to ask about the Millers. As he walked back across the street, he couldn't help but wonder if some subconscious part of him had engineered this second mistake. The thought made him uncomfortable. He wasn't the type to create elaborate excuses to talk to someone. Was he? The consequences of Alex's second knock rippled through his thoughts as he approached Margaret's house again. What would she think of him returning so soon? Would she see through his flimsy excuse about looking for the Millers? As he stood once more before the burgundy door, Alex experienced an internal conflict that would become familiar in the days to come. The tension between his genuine desire for connection and his fear of appearing too eager or, worse, creepy. This second knock represented more than just another attempt at neighborly introduction. It was Alex testing the boundaries of social convention and his own comfort zone. When Margaret opened the door again, surprise registered on her face before melting into a smile. "Twice in one day," she remarked. "Did you forget something?" Alex explained his confusion about the Millers, feeling increasingly foolish as the words tumbled out. Margaret leaned against her doorframe, amusement playing at the corners of her mouth. "The Millers moved away about 6 months ago," she explained. "The Patels live at 26, and the house at 22 is currently empty." Alex felt a mix of embarrassment and relief. Embarrassment at his continued confusion, but relief that his return had a legitimate explanation. Their conversation continued longer this time, with Margaret offering to draw him a small map of the neighborhood to help him get his bearings. As she disappeared inside to fetch paper and pen, Alex stood awkwardly on her porch, wondering how he had managed to make such a mess of a simple task. When Margaret returned with the map, their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and Alex felt an unexpected jolt of connection. Their conversation flowed more naturally now, touching on topics beyond just house numbers. Where to find the best coffee in town, which day the garbage was collected, the neighborhood's annual block party tradition. By the time Alex finally left, nearly 30 minutes had passed, and he had learned more about the community from Margaret than he likely would have from any of his originally intended visits. As days turned into weeks, Alex found himself thinking about Margaret more often than he cared to admit. He would see her occasionally while collecting his mail or taking out the trash, and they would exchange friendly waves across the street. But something held him back from making another approach. Perhaps it was the lingering embarrassment from their first encounters, or maybe it was the voice in his head warning him not to read too much into her friendliness. After all, she was just being a good neighbor, wasn't she? Let me explain why these seemingly small interactions can carry such weight in our lives. In an increasingly digital world, where connections are often formed through screens rather than face-to-face encounters, these genuine, if awkward, human moments take on greater significance. Alex's fumbling attempts at neighborhood integration represent something many of us experience: the vulnerable process of putting ourselves out there, risking rejection or misunderstanding in the hope of meaningful connection. 3 weeks after his second visit to Margaret's door, Alex found himself standing before it once again. This time, there was no pretense of a wrong address or a search for non-existent neighbors. He had spent days debating whether to return, crafting and discarding potential excuses, borrowing sugar, asking about local contractors, seeking recommendations for restaurants. In the end, he decided that honesty, however uncomfortable, was the only approach that felt right. The neighborhood had changed subtly in the weeks since his last visit. Halloween decorations had begun to appear on porches, and the trees had shed more of their leaves, creating a golden carpet on lawns and sidewalks. But the most significant changes had occurred within Alex himself. His decision to return without an excuse was born from a growing realization that life's most meaningful connections often require courage. The courage to be vulnerable, to risk rejection, to show genuine interest without the safety net of plausible deniability. As he walked the now familiar path to Margaret's house, Alex reflected on their previous encounters. What had started as an accidental knock had evolved into something that felt increasingly like fate, though Alex wasn't typically one to believe in such concepts. The motivation behind his return was simple, yet terrifying in its honesty. He enjoyed Margaret's company and wanted to see if there might be potential for friendship, or perhaps something more. As Alex raised his hand to knock on the burgundy door for the third time, he felt a strange calm replace his usual anxiety. Whatever happened next, he was being true to himself. The door opened more quickly this time, as if Margaret had been passing by the entryway. Her face registered surprise, followed by what Alex hoped was pleasure. "Alex," she said, his name sounding somehow different in her voice. "Is everything okay?" This was the moment of truth. Alex took a deep breath and abandoned the script he had rehearsed in his mind. "I don't actually need anything," he admitted. "I just wanted to see you again. I thought maybe we could get coffee sometime, if you'd like to." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity, though it was likely only seconds. Margaret's expression was unreadable at first, and Alex braced himself for rejection. But then a slow smile spread across her face. "I was wondering when you'd come back," she said. "I've had a pot of coffee ready every Saturday afternoon, just in case." The admission caught Alex off guard, and for a moment, he was speechless. "You have?" he finally managed to ask. Margaret nodded, a hint of color rising to her cheeks. "I had a feeling your second accidental visit might not be the last," she explained. "And I was hoping it wouldn't be." What followed was not what Alex had expected when he first set out to meet his neighbors weeks ago. Margaret invited him in, and they spent hours talking over coffee that had indeed been freshly brewed that afternoon. They discovered shared interests in classic films and hiking, laughed about their mutual dislike of reality TV, and exchanged stories about their respective journeys to this neighborhood. As afternoon turned to evening, Alex realized that his accidental knocks had led to something that felt remarkably like serendipity. As Alex finally prepared to leave, standing once more at Margaret's door, but now on the inside looking out, he reflected on the strange path that had led to this moment. "I should probably confess something," he said, hesitating at the threshold. "The first knock really was an accident. But the second time, I think part of me wanted an excuse to see you again." Margaret's response was a knowing smile. "And the third time?" she asked. "The third time was the hardest," Alex admitted. "No excuses, just honesty." Margaret reached out and briefly touched his arm. "Honesty looks good on you," she said. "You should wear it more often." Walking home under a canopy of stars, Alex contemplated the events that had unfolded from a simple mix-up of house numbers. His growth through these encounters was subtle but profound, from a man hiding behind excuses to someone willing to risk vulnerability for the possibility of connection. The impact on his relationship with Margaret remained to be seen, but already he felt a shift in how he viewed himself and his place in this community. The burgundy door that had once represented his embarrassing mistake now symbolized possibility and courage. The lessons Alex learned through his accidental knocks extended beyond his relationship with Margaret. He began to approach other aspects of his life with the same honesty he had finally brought to her doorstep. At work, he voiced ideas he would have previously kept to himself. With friends, he expressed feelings he might once have buried. Each small act of authenticity built upon the last, creating a version of himself that felt more aligned with who he truly wanted to be. The lingering effects of these encounters transformed Alex's perspective on coincidence and intention. Were his mistakes really accidents, or had some deeper intuition guided him to Margaret's door? Did it matter either way, if the outcome had brought such positive change to his life? These questions remained with him, not as puzzles to be solved, but as reminders of life's beautiful unpredictability. As we reflect on Alex's journey from accidental visitor to intentional connection seeker, we're reminded of how often the most significant relationships in our lives begin with moments we couldn't have planned. A wrong turn, a misread address, a chance encounter. These seemingly random events can lead to profound connections if we're open to following where they lead. The importance of communication and understanding shines through Alex's story. His willingness to move beyond embarrassment, to acknowledge his mistakes, and ultimately his intentions, created the foundation for authentic connection. Perhaps we all have our own versions of accidental knocks, moments when chance or mistake led us somewhere unexpected, but exactly where we needed to be. Think about the relationships in your own life. How many began with coincidence rather than planning? How many of your most treasured connections emerged from circumstances you couldn't have engineered if you tried? Alex's story invites us to consider how often the universe seems to know what we need before we do, guiding us through mistakes toward meaningful encounters that shape our lives in ways we could never anticipate. The next time you find yourself at the wrong door, facing an unexpected person, or navigating an unplanned situation, remember Alex and Margaret. Consider that perhaps there are no wrong doors, only different paths to where we're meant to be. And sometimes, the courage to knock again, without excuse or pretense, is all it takes to open the door to possibility. Total _char_count, 13,541.